تراب الوطن وحني ايديا.
سابوا أرض الدار شيلوا الأحمال، يا ساكن بالغربة عبلادك تعال. ما بكتل مكتوب ما بكتل مرسال، ملت الأوراق خط حروفنا.
يا فاخدني معاك ععكا وديني عالصور فوق البحر رباني السفيني. مشتاق اشوف الزارع اللوز والتيني وازور ارض الجليل ومي الطبرية.
يا زاري فطول عنا الخبر شاع، والقلب مجروح من ساعة يوداع. يا ترك الدار على الدار رجاع، أدعي رب الكون يجمع شملنا.
My father lost his life because he failed to see the threat that was mounting against him from his own people. Now, all it will take is one man to convince the people he is their Messiah. The prophet said this man will rise from the house of David.
This census would bring him back home.
Have your soldiers and your spies keep watch for a man returning to Bethlehem. A man of power. A man the people will follow.
Town of Nazareth, in the name of King Herod and the Almighty Caesar, you are ordered to participate in the census of all people. Each man will return to the land of his ancestors, along with each member of his family.
Jerusalén, la ciudad santa.
I'll be delivering the talk, Jehovah, our Grand Maker. Brother Ciro, Aulicino, please.
Psalm 97:9 lauds Jehovah our God with these heartfelt words. For you, O Jehovah, are the most high over all the earth. You are very high in your ascent over all other gods. This is one of the 50 times in the Bible where Jehovah is called or entitled or named the Most High, meaning He's the highest person in all the universe. All the Bible writers who have used this term apply it exclusively to Him alone. Why did they believe that Jehovah alone is worthy of it? The answer, friends, is closely related to His being our grand creator. In fact, it will highlight the reality of it. Therefore, we urge you to turn to Revelation 10, verse 6. Revelation 10, verse 6. Now, we're just going to read the first phrase. And we're going to notice it says there in the first phrase that Jehovah, in Revelation 10, 6, is the one who lives forever and ever. What does that mean? He lives forever and ever. Well, of course, I'm sure you'll all say, well, He's immortal. But, friends, there's more to that. What does it mean He's immortal? It means that life in Jehovah God is renewing itself constantly and continually. In fact, Jesus declared at John 5:26 this very astounding expression. He says, the Father has life in Himself. Now, that's something we can't even imagine. Here, at the peak of perfection, life in the Father never deteriorates one iota, but it springs up like a fountain within Him, pure and holy. Now, this astounds us. Why? Because even more staggering to our minds is the fact that Jehovah keeps on living forever and ever, independent of any external nourishment. Such knowledge is too wonderful for us who are humans. It's so high up that we cannot attain to it, and we ought not to try to imagine God's immortality, because it's just something we would be wasting our time on. We have to accept that, the same as we accept the sun renewing itself, even though it's a created object, for millions of years, and will go on and on and on, you see. Now, why is this so astounding to us? Because we humans depend on air, we depend on food, we depend on water to stay alive. And alas, if Adam had not sinned, because of Adam's sins, we are also mortals. You know, that word mortal means subject to death. So our mental capacities cannot grasp even a fraction of all the factors involved in Jehovah's immortality. But one thing about it we can be very sure, friends, that we should appreciate, that Jehovah's eternalness, His immortality, gives Him the supremacy that makes Him the Most High God for all eternity. Now let's go back to Revelation 10:6. I'm glad you kept your Bibles open there. We're going to take the second part there. It says that Jehovah God, and we're going to paraphrase this next part of it. Jehovah is the God, is the one who created the heaven and the earth and the sea and the things in them. Now what does this tell you about Jehovah God? That Jehovah is the great first cause. This means that He never was created. He never had a beginning, because the Bible tells us that Jehovah is the beginning. That's in Revelation 21:6 and 22:13. Since Jehovah is alone uncreated, and this is something to keep in mind, He will forever have the primacy and hold the supreme and ultimate position in the universe. He'll always be first, friends. Always. Now read how Psalm 113:4 proclaims this, and the question that's being asked in the next verse, it alludes to His being the Most High God. Psalm 113, verse 4, it says, His, that is Jehovah's glory, is above the heavens. Who is like Jehovah our God? That's a good question. Him who is making His dwelling on high. Okay, now I want you to go to Psalm 89, 6 and 7. We're going to tie these scriptures in. Here is Ethan the Ezrahite. He's asking a similar question, but Ethan gets apocalyptic. What do we mean by that? Let's find out. He says there in Psalm 89, "For who in the skies can be compared to Jehovah? Who can resemble Jehovah among the sons of God?" And this is where he gets apocalyptic. God is to be held. Now this is a future expression. Will be or is to be held in awe among the intimate group of holy ones. Look at the eyes roll up there. There's something here. He is grand and fear-inspiring over all who are round about him. Now, you remember Revelation 4:4 and verses Revelation 4:4, 10 and 11? It says that there is an intimate group who cast their crowns before God. What does that tell you? That this is a prediction, this is a prophecy, that the day is going to come. He doesn't realize what he's writing, these Ethan. He doesn't realize he's seeing what John saw, where the 144,000, that intimate group of holy ones who come right into God's very presence, even above the angels. See this? Way back there in the Psalms, Jehovah's talking about this group, even before Daniel got the vision of it. See, we read too fast. That's the problem with us. We all read the Bible like as if it's the New York Times. We shouldn't do that. To take the time slow, read it, meditate on it. What does he say? Who is this intimate group? Yes, it's the 144,000. And they cast their crowns before him. We saw that beautiful picture in the Revelation book. You saw first the great, beautiful jewel, the green. Then you went a little next page and you saw that 24 elders. There's the intimate group. And then you turn another page and there were all the angels. He is grand, according to those pictures, as with the artist's conception, and fear-inspiring over all around him. Not only the intimate group, but all the angels. So, friends, isn't that amazing? When you look at your Bible and you realize that God has put so much into it, but he's been throwing little hints throughout the Hebrew Scriptures of this one special group, and then gives us the number finally to John through his son in the book of Revelation. Now, Jehovah our God is the Father of celestial lights. Now, you've heard that expression there in James 1:17. He's a God of incomparable beauty. When you think of the God of the celestial lights, now you think of the stars having all different colors, and he's the God of them, you see. His beauty outshines, and his glory outshines that of all his spirit sons. Don't even bother talking about the sun and the moon and the stars. Forget them. All his spirit sons living in his heavenly courts. Individually, you can't compare one to one, or if you took the whole bunch of them, all of them together, collectively, they could not equal his beauty and glory. None of his angels can be compared to him, not even his firstborn son, Jesus Christ, whom Jehovah now lovingly has crowned with glory and honor and is spoken of as dwelling in an unapproachable light at this moment. The one that blinded the Apostle Paul, or the fellow Saul, made later became Paul. Now think of that, friends. You see that? Jehovah alone, truly then, friends, deserves to be called the Most High in all the universe. Furthermore, we got more things about Jehovah God. By the way, this 45 minutes is ridiculous. It's like you can't even talk about God in 45 seconds or in 55 minutes, whatever you'll have here. Jehovah holds the unique position as the only creator of all created things. Now, Nehemiah, turn to Nehemiah. You're going to see how Nehemiah 9:6a is almost word for word as Revelation 10:6. Nehemiah 9:6a. You'll just say, right, this. But you see, it's the same author. And authors that write use and repeat themselves in expressions and styles. So Jehovah has his style, and of course with his wisdom, in his literary style, he can repeat for a purpose. But here in Nehemiah 9:6a, he says, "You are Jehovah alone." Now here it is, here we go again. "You yourself have made the heavens, even the heaven of the heavens, and all their army, the earth, and all that is upon it, the sea, and all that is in them." Now, Jehovah here is being called the sole creator in this verse of Nehemiah. But it's also emphasized, his being a sole creator, by the language that our first father Adam spoke, and later Eve, Hebrew. They have a word in Hebrew for create. It is called bara. That word is used only in connection with Jehovah God. You'll never see Jehovah God saying, "A man bara." No. That Hebrew is very, very exclusive in that expression. And that's why when you read in the Bible, the first verse, Bereshit bara Elohim, in beginning created God. There's the bara. Now you also find another Hebrew word which is called asa, and that word is used to, is a word meaning make, and it's used in conjunction with reporting Jehovah's creative work. But that word is broader. Man can make, you say. While it is used as a synonym in Genesis to create, where we read in Genesis 1:25, God made all the land animals. Well, of course, you know He created all the land animals and all the different creatures. So there was a creation there, but it's using the word make. It also describes the arranging of already created things to perform certain functions. God made the expanse by moving the water in vapor form above and moving and keeping the water in liquid form below, and then creating the expanse where all the birds fly. The blue sky and the clouds, you see, that's what God. He used the word make there. And He made the land to appear, you see. He took the land and buckled it up, and that was it. Or it is used, friends, in conjunction when others are involved in the action, as showed in Genesis 1:26, where He invites His master worker son to share in the creation of woman. Na'aseh ha'adam b'tzalmenu kidmusenu, which means na'aseh, let us. Na'aseh there, asa, that's the root. When you put the na in front of it, means us. Let us make man in our image and in our likeness, or according to our image, according to our likeness. Now here He's inviting His master worker son to share in the creation of man and woman. Here we come to a problem with certain religions. Does this mean that this master worker is a co-creator? No. With certain religions. Does this mean that this master worker is a co-creator? No. Because Proverbs 8:22, we have the fellow's own expression. At Proverbs 8:22, this master worker says, Jehovah Himself produced me as the beginning of His way, the earliest of His achievements of long ago. And what's He telling us? He said, well, if Jehovah produced Him, that means He had a beginning, right? Of course. And if He's the earliest of God's achievements of long ago, again He had a beginning. But notice, friends, here again, we read too fast sometimes. It says, Jehovah Himself. The Hebrew puts that word or indicates Himself, meaning that Jehovah God directly begot this master worker son. That's something that's a distinction no other creature will ever have. You see? Yet in spite of the singular way in which Jehovah God created him, and this is where the religions fail, He did have a beginning. God has no beginning. So He was not part of a Trinity. He's the firstborn of all creation, and therefore if He's the firstborn of all creation, He could have never been a co-first cause equal to Jehovah God. He is a son. Father, Jehovah God is a father, the older one. At Proverbs 8:30, I'd like you to show you something else, friends. Again, we read too fast. In Proverbs 8:30, this master worker's son said something. He said that I came to be beside him as a master worker. Notice his humility, Fred. Now in Hebrew, if you want to distinguish somebody, you'll always use the word the, ho. But he doesn't have that there. He simply is humbly telling us that he is a master worker. He is not entitling himself that I was the master worker, although he had the right to use that. In fact, when he came to the earth as Jesus Christ, now we already went through that book, The Greatest Man Who Ever Lived. Didn't we love Jesus for his humility? Then you'll see how that humility that was shown in heaven when he described himself as a master worker is the same expression. When he was arguing with the Pharisees, did he credit himself and his Father as we who created? Did he say we who yoked them together? No, he simply said he who created or God who yoked them. He never took credit to himself. See the humility? Friends, that's something to keep in mind. Now, with that background, with this master worker, let us see, going back to Jehovah God, why he is fittingly called the Grand Creator. In the New World Translation, you'll find that expression. In fact, that's the only translation you'll find that expression. Ecclesiastes 12:1 describes God as, remember your Grand Creator. In Job 35:10, Psalm 149:2, Isaiah 54:5, he is called Jehovah the Grand Maker, called the Grand Instructor, the Grand Teacher. Why does this expression grand appear when you open up the King James Bible or any other Bible, modern, and they simply say, remember your Creator, remember the Maker, the Teacher? Because these descriptive titles, the word Creator, Maker, Instructor, or nouns, are in the original Hebrew, are in the plural, which denotes to the Hebrew when he reads it that there's not many gods or many makers or many teachers, but it denotes such a grandeur, such a majesty, and such an excellence. Now the other translations will ignore that, and when they only say Creator, they're not giving their readers the complete meaning of the original Hebrew text. In fact, friend, when you hear it, aren't they weakening the full force of it? Remember your Creator. That's nice. Remember your Grand Creator. Automatically that conveys to your mind Jehovah's unmatched majesty. It helps give us a picture of his incomparable position, his dignity, his supremacy, his awe-inspiring power and glory. Now, friends, this is one of the numerous little accuracies that make our New World Translation the best of them all. Now, I know what you're saying. Well, sometimes I read that. It really is hard. You know, some of the terms are, it's not sometimes easy. Friends, this is the Hebrew. This is exactly almost how they... So you better get used to it because you're going to talk Hebrew like I told you yesterday. So it'll be easy if you've got used to it and your mind starts talking it one day in the New World, then it'll be no problem. You're used to the terms, you say. So get used to studying it now. And if anyone gives you a hard time saying, well, that's your Bible, say, no, it's not our Bible. Because many of our people who came into truth or became Jehovah's Witnesses got it on the King James Version. But when they bought a Cadillac, they didn't decide to use the T model Ford, which you're using, which was published in 1611. This is a modern translation. We get places fast with it. We don't take our time. So you can be very tactful and say that to them. You'll have to do it your way. But that will help them to appreciate that. And many people who start studying with Jehovah's Witnesses, I'm using my Bible. Okay, fine. Then after about 3-4 studies, I knew one person was going to... you think the King James is dead, you ought to go through the Douay, the Catholic Bible. That's even worse. For blocking up meaning. Well, after a while, the fellow was skipping and said, hey, better give me this Bible. Get me one of these. So he got it. So they begin to see. And there is no finagling with the Bible as the apostates would claim. No. Having known little Hebrew myself and knowing one of our researchers in Columbia University, because of his work, he's had to take Hebrew. And he says that his respect for the New World, as well as mine, is that when you're reading it, there's no need to bother with the Hebrew, you see, because this is it. In fact, when he went to class that day, guess what the teacher was using on her desk as an instruction? And he says to her, he prayed, he didn't let her know she was a witness. He says, may I ask what? Oh, she says, that's the best of them all. But she never uses the name Jehovah because she's Jewish. She said she'd get fired. So she teaches everything around it. But he says, but then in her teaching, she traps herself because the passage needs to use the name. And he says, doesn't the name help here? Anyway, puts the class in the dither. But it does tell you about how wonderful it is, and you should appreciate the New World Translation. And use it. You brothers should use that on the platform all the time. We do not encourage using other translations because, in the future we're going to have something very special in the magazines that will show you what corruption is being happening in the Bible, so you have to be very careful. But that's something for you to be dangled in front of and get you hungry for that article when it comes out. Notice how Jehovah's grandness is revealed in the greatest words ever written. Do you know what the greatest words ever written? Well, you might say, oh, give me liberty and give me death. No, friends. I have one life to give him. Like, no, friends. Bereshit bara Elohim et hash shamayim Wa'et ha'aretz. In Hebrew, a little bar mitzvah boy is going to take it, will tell you that means, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Friends, those are the greatest words ever written. Because if those words didn't take place, you and I wouldn't be here. That's it. Those are the great. Just look at that sentence in your New World Translation. What a stupendous accomplishment is envisioned. In the beginning, God created the heavens. Just think of that. One fell swoop and one pen, stroke of the pen. We are talking about the creation of the awesome universe that the scientists are still studying. They're sending everything out, probes there. They're still finding more and more and more. They now are beginning to say that the universe is still expanding. So they're never going to catch up. No matter what rockets they get, the universe is way ahead. Hey guys, goodbye. You know, that's what it's like with it. This means that matter and energy composing it had a beginning. And scientists will tell you that. If it always existed, that as the evolutionists would like you to believe, which is unscientific, then the use of the word beginning in Genesis 1:1 would be inappropriate. It would not be true. Now, is that what we hear in the Bible? That God speaks falsehood? No, friends. No, this is based on truth. Jehovah is from time indefinite to time indefinite. He is the ageless one who proceeded to bring forth the earth and the productive land. Now, how did the heavens and the earth come about by God's will? How did He create them? Well, Genesis 1:2b answers. Open your Bible, please. Genesis 1:2. And I say 2 because that's the second part of the verse. And God's active force, or Holy Spirit, was moving to and fro over the surface of the waters. In Hebrew, now notice how, I want to say this because I want you to get used to learning Hebrew. Notice how it had plays on the word. Ruach, Elohim. Now you know what Ruach, you've had Bible studies with people, and you know Ruach is the Spirit. So that sounds familiar. You know Elohim is God, right? So you already know 3 Hebrew words. Smart people. And this is the part that's going to catch you. Mirachefet al pinei hamayim. Now mirachefet is the moving and the to and the fro. Now notice how the Hebrew word almost dances on that. That God's Holy Spirit was just moving, ready to do God's will, but had to be directed by Jehovah through the one who later became Jesus Christ. Now you get a parallel thought in Psalm 33 verse 6. Now let's turn to Psalm 33 verse 6. And Jehovah God again repeats it, only in a poetic form in this particular verse. And the psalmist is saying it, Psalm 33 verse 6, by the word of Jehovah the heavens themselves were made, and by the Spirit of His mouth all their army. So the Word could be the master worker's Son. Jehovah gave the Word through the Son, who now used that Spirit to start moving, and not as a blind spirit, but directed to do things according to His, like much as we would apply a hammer to a nail, and the hammer is useless and the nail, but once we apply power, the nail goes in. So that power, that Spirit, now once it was directed, began to create. And all the army of the heavens and the earth, everything was made. See that? That's something to think about. Now 1 Corinthians 14:33 declares something about God as a person, that God is not a God of confusion, but a God of order. And that's precisely what we see in creation, friends. Isn't that the truth? Look how beautiful springtime is today. Last year, the spring was just as beautiful as the year before, right? All of God's productions are the epitome of orderliness. They are never chaotic. They never exist by chance, as evolutionists would tell you. Imagine what our life would be like if it was, as evolutionists say. Why, if the sun rose a different time every day, what time is the meeting today? I don't know. The sun didn't rise. It's 10 o'clock. The sun hasn't come up yet. We can't get to the meeting until the sun comes up. And tomorrow, I think the sun's going to rise up tomorrow about 8. I don't know. I'm not sure. How could you live your life, right? And what if spring followed summer? What if the spring came in September? What would happen to you? What would the farmers do? And what if autumn came in April after winter? That'd be crazy. No, but everything is of a great pattern. We could never plan our activities for the continuance of life if there was no orderliness. Now let's make this a little even further. What if creatures and plants did not reproduce their kind, but were constantly mutating and producing unrecognizable, ugly, grotesque forms of life. Why, we'd be in a state of perpetual shock. The insecurity would unbalance our mental equilibrium, or as the brothers say sometimes, it would space out our minds. What is that? I don't know. It looks like a dog, but look, it's got a monkey's tail and it's got cat's claws. I can't even tell where the teeth come from. Oh, my friends. No, that's so silly. A pussy cat, there was a pussy cat in the Garden of Eden, and they had kittens, and when Jesus was on the earth, there were little pussy cats and little puppy dogs. In fact, he mentioned little dogs under the table, right? And you're going to have pussy cats and little puppy dogs in the new world, and they will be here, always reproducing their own kind. Thank Jehovah that there is uniformity and constancy in all his work, and that he is permanently, not temporarily, permanently locked into every living thing a code of reproduction with its preset program of growth. The baby kitten, bigger mommy cat, puppy cat, dog, they always grow the same way. If that didn't work out, we would have a problem. Even parents, if the children don't grow it and are not, if we go to the hospital real fast. We knew a family that had a little boy that something had happened to his preset growth, and at was he about 9 or 10 years old, or he had the body of a 4-year-old. It's a tragedy. They were in the truth. We became very close to them. But aren't we glad that Jehovah God has set that program? But it happens once in a while in Satan's system of things with the imperfection that these things occur. And we know that someday he'll be perfect in the new world and will be as big as me, giving me a hard time probably. Well, as Moses said, Jehovah's activity is perfect. His works are wonderful, said the psalmist, as our souls are very well aware. They are simply grand. Now, the congregator at Ecclesiastes 3:14 acknowledged in his expression that Jehovah's creations are not just astounding, but they are complete masterpieces in every respect. Let's turn to Ecclesiastes 3:14. Now, we may have heard this, but we ought to think of this, friends, very carefully. First, in verse 11, there is the expression that everything God has made is pretty in its time, or beautiful. I have come to know in verse 14 that everything, not some things, everything that the true God makes, it will prove to be to time indefinite. That means it's here to stay. To it there is nothing to add. From it there is nothing to subtract. But the true God himself made it. Why? That people may be afraid on account of him, or may be in fear. Well, friends, if you can't add something to something, or you can't subtract it, that means it has to be perfect. Now, let me give you an illustration of this. When you add something to something, it's usually to improve it. That's what they do when they want to improve something. They edit it, or they will modify it, and you get automobiles that are constantly being modified. You see, they're trying to improve it. Or if you take something from it, that is because there's too much. Now, have you ever seen a flower that you thought, oh my goodness, there's too much in that flower? Have you ever had to add perfume to a flower's scent to make it better? Do you go around the garden spraying your perfume? Whatever perfume you use, poison, I don't know what you use, whatever. You spray it on. No, of course nobody uses that. Yeah, you don't go around painting your roses gold, do you? You may do that later on after that to have a certain effect, but it's never as beautiful as the real thing, is it? That's the same thing with God's works. You think that Adam went through the garden and said, oh, there's too many waterfalls there, it's giving me a headache. Do you think he said, oh no, he never said that, no. Everywhere he walked in the garden was a masterpiece, not only as a gardener, but even as individual creation. The great abundance and the rich variety, which we are going to spend eternity studying, by the way, declare that God is truly the Most High God, the producer of heaven and earth. And I like to add this one word, I'm sure that he would appreciate me saying, we call you Jehovah, the prolific producer of the heavens and the earth. Now, as we learned earlier, God's first great production was his only begotten Son. And at John 1:3, In Colossians 1:15 to 6:17, we find that Jehovah used him as a master worker to create all other things. So it was by means of Jehovah that the God began to bring into being all his 10,000 times 10,000 spirit sons in heaven. Millions of angels, friends, imagine. Each one with his own unique and distinctive personality. Now, what an amazing fact or act of creation that is. It's not about makes an angel that reproduce their own kind. That's a different thing. Each one is a distinct thing. Now, consider Jehovah's stupendous feat now, getting all these millions of angels and now organizing them to serve his purpose. He didn't create them to say, well, what are you going to do? I don't know. Let's see, what are we going to do? Let's find a job for you guys. No. God created them with a purpose. We should never think that he inconsiderately assigned large groups of them as serfs to do certain menial tasks while he arbitrarily put his pet favorites in the most prestigious positions around him. Oh no, friends, that's revolting. This is the procedure of sinful men. And what do they reap from it? Demoralization, discontent, murmuring, hatred, which often erupts into open rebellion and bloodshed. You see that. No, Jehovah God personally assigned each son a specific place in his heavenly organization to serve his purpose. And the place Jehovah God chose for that son was and is ideally suited for that angel's particular abilities, so that there he could use his God-given talents to their fullest potential. And also, one further thing, Jehovah God knew that the place where he would assign that son would be the happiest. He would be the happiest. That angel would be the happiest there. So now I think you can appreciate the enormity of the wickedness of those angels who did not keep their original assigned position, their theocratic assignment, divinely given by God, but forsook their own proper dwelling place to come down here and live with the children of men or the daughters of men. Now you can see that. How did they do that? Well, there's an interesting article in Questions from Readers in the Watchtower. It said that evidently the devil went around and started to fill their heads, and the ones that did not keep busy listened to him, and God talked into it. And now what did he do? He might have said to them, well, you know, if you come down to the earth, you can help raise them to perfection, and you'll have a lot of fun doing it. You know, he had to tempt them with something. And they began to look and notice, and they began to desire, and next thing you knew it. And that's so. It doesn't only happen to men to get tempted. They got enticed by the desire which the devil put into their hearts. So the point is, you don't give the devil even a fraction, whether you're an angel or a man, you see, or a woman, wherever you are. After that God created all these wonderful angels, you know what he did? He now treated them as his children, as his sons, to the glorious spectacle of watching him through his master worker son construct the physical universe. The awesome material heavens made up of gigantic galaxies of stars and suns and planets and moons and all the elements. And there, friends, like a speck of dust. Now, how can I say? Well, I don't know. I think this is so, it's almost, you can't even see it. But there are lines in this wallpaper. I want you to think of a line about a quarter of an inch. I want you to picture this as the entire universe. And there, this little one line here, let's take it under the letter E, for Earth, is the little Earth. You can't see that. And there in this little speck of dust, amid these galaxies, amid all these awesome heavenly bodies, spins a tiny Earth in a tiny little orbit. You see, what a unique production that thing is. For here on our Earth, this is the only planet where life is found. Everything's set up on it, and in it supports some 5 million different kinds of organisms. Now you see, God is a miniaturist, isn't he? You know what a miniature is? He's a fellow that can make little things, scrimshaw, and do little things. Well, God is the first one, because when you think of this whole universe, there's a line over here is the Earth, you see. Now you might say, I know some people have often wondered, well then, when Adam and Eve sinned, why did God worry about it? Why, he's got all this to worry about. Why look at that little thing? Ah, friends, I'll ask the sisters a question. You have a beautiful necklace there. I see sister there has a beautiful necklace. And you say you have all diamonds there. Now say, what if one of the diamonds fell out? Would you wear it? Or would you keep saying to your husband, honey, I got to get this diamond in here. I got to replace it. We lost it. We can't find it. You wouldn't wear it, would you, Alpha Diamond? Well, the earth is one of Jehovah's diamonds. And he wants it right where it is. It belongs. In fact, I'd like to quote a composer who wrote concertos. His name was Rachmaninoff. And he was always being under the siege that he was very sensitive. And when someone would say that some of his music was too long, they would suggest a cut, and he said, this is what he said, and try to think of Jehovah God and the earth. You do not know what cuts do to me. That is making an excision in my concerto. It's like cutting out a piece of my heart. So, he would be cutting out Jehovah, a piece of his heart, with all the love he's shown for mankind, to say, well, I'll let it spin off and let the devil have it. No. That's one of his little diamonds, and he wants it right there where it belongs. Now that should give us confidence that Jehovah God is going to bring us home to paradise. Because if he didn't care, friends, that whole 2 hours we spent here, it was a waste of time. We were dreaming. No, that's real. And because of his love for the earth, you and I were able to envision a wonderful life that we're going to have. And it's going to be a real thing, friends. Now let's discuss, just very briefly, because we could talk hours on this, about some of the superb masterpieces of creation. Let's turn to Genesis 1, 11 and 12. We're just going to paraphrase it because we haven't got the time to go into it. When you read about the creation of all the vegetation, what do you think about? An astonishing variety in which we are talking about 335,000 different species of plants. 20,000 different kinds of trees. Now, friends, let's compound it by thinking that each plant or each plant or a piece of vegetation has its own characteristic fruit or vegetable, has its own kind of blossom, right? Peach blossom is different from an apple blossom, right? Plums, violets, all of them. Each one has its own leaf shape, right? Each one has its own, you don't know that, but each one has its own different root system. The root system of an oak tree is different from that of a weeping willow. Oh, yes. And each has its own reproductive seed. Take the peach pit, the plum pit, all the orange seeds, the tomato seeds, the watermelon seeds, the cantaloupe, all different, right? No two are alike. Now let's take the trees. We got to add some more now. Each tree you have to add has its own distinctive bark. You have the birch, the oak, the teak, oak's distinctive trunk, and its own distinctive wood. If you would cut the wood, you tell any carpenter, these fellows can look at the wood and say, well, that's pine, oak, maple, know exactly what to use for furniture. Now think of that, friends. Now you sisters are going to love this. Do you know how many flowers God has made? 250,000 flowers. That's 250,000. And it is said, if you figure it out, that when you get into the new system, you can have a different bouquet. Don't mix them. Just one bouquet of one flower. If you take one for each day, it will run 685 years before you start over again. Now, are we made to live forever? Why don't you make flowers for 80 years? That's enough. And that's enough. We're going to die. No. You see, God has eternity in view for us. He made all these flowers. These people are never going to get bored. Now, we're just talking about the one kind. Now, I want you to start combining them. Now you go into eternity. Once you start combining these 250,000 into different combinations, it goes on and on and on, friends. Let's go on now to the other statistics that are overwhelming. Genesis 1:20. 30,000 varieties of fish. Yes. 9,000 species of birds. Look at that. We talked about that yesterday. All the kinds that are going to come and see you. And the kids are going to love this. Oh, you're going to love this. No jars, though. 700,000 kinds of insects. You see that? Yeah, I know we'd like to put them in a jar. I used to do that, too. That have already been classified, and scientists still say there are more being discovered. Now, I know the sisters wonder. You mean the cockroach and the mosquito and the flea? Yes. But once upon a time in the Garden of Eden, they belonged where they were. It's only when man unbalances that we have these unwelcome guests that come in to visit the house. But in the garden, they'll be where they belong, and they'll serve a purpose. But all the varieties of fish, you've seen pictures of in National Geographic and Undersea Exploration, and the Society has published pictures of different fish. Now, this is just my viewpoint. I just feel, with the beautiful color of those fish, that Jehovah God has something wonderful in store for us, where He's going to get us to go down there and see them. I don't know what He's going to do. I don't think He's going to give us gills, so let's get that. But He's going to get us down there to see their beauty in far better equipment than these men have today, and very safe. And we will see that all these colors are meant to be seen. The balloon fish, the clown fish, and all the tropical fish. You have a fish tank in a medical office, and it sort of calms you down. If you're ready, it's a dental office, and you watch them going back and forth. Sort of calms you down, right? But there has to be something there. So let's wait for the new system, and we'll all get in our scuba, whatever it is, and we'll go down deep sea and sing. We'll see what happens. Let's go on now to Genesis 1:24. Here we're presented with 14,000 kinds of land creatures. Oh my! Mammals, amphibians, and reptiles. So not only the wild animals, friends, but the domestic animals. All of them, you see. The puppy dog and all the kinds of dogs, too, and the cats. And then the wild animals, we talked about them yesterday. All of them will be our friends. Now, God made these creatures to be in subjection, you see. Now, there was a fish, and we're going to go back for a moment. His name was Ulysses. I wonder if anybody saw Jacques Cousteau, where they saw Ulysses. Ulysses was the ugliest fish you ever saw. But he loved Jacques, and he would follow him. And when Jacques would hit the water, he would come looking for food. So he was in subjection. So who knows in the new system what we're going to enjoy. We can imagine riding the dolphins, huh? Yeah? It will be wonderful. Well, now, here are all these animals, the amphibians. Oh, I know you don't like it, but there's the reptiles again. They were made for a purpose, friends. And the fact that they were not frightening is that when Eve was at the garden, and women are sensitive. She was a perfect woman. If that thing was ugly, she'd have made a beat pit. But she looked at it, and she probably never was offended by it. So the only thing she should have realized is this thing shouldn't be talking. It always does. I can't get it right. That's all it should be doing. And this thing starts to talk. She says, hey, wait a minute, something's wrong here. So I don't know you, and I never heard your voice. I just know that you're a dumb creature. And that was a tragedy, friends. She listened. Of course, the devil was behind her. And well, friends, as long as man has been living on this earth for about 6,000 years, you know he is still learning many new things about God's creation. There are many other creatures of which he's had no previous knowledge he's finding out. And the more he examines God's creation, the more intelligent design is discerned. Now, I'd like to give you an illustration of let's not use a razor blade. I'm sure your brothers who've given the lecture here have used the razor blade. I want to use the sharpest possible instrument that doctors use, a scalpel or a knife, a surgical knife. Do you know why they have to have it very sharp? So that when they cut you for the operation, the least amount of blood is lost. You see, a good doctor doesn't need blood. If he cuts you right and has everything properly and sutures you properly, there'll be the blood loss can be good. But that blade must be so quick. Now, if you were to take that blade off the surgical handle and put it under a microscope, do you know what it would look like? It would look all jagged. You wouldn't believe it. Now, you take the leaf of a the leaf of a plant. I never forget when I was a young boy, a teacher gave me an experiment to look, an assignment to look in a microscope under a little part of an onion. Now, an onion is a lowly, friends, it was the most, to this day, I still remember the pastel pink, blue, and yellow of that onion. Gorgeous. Think about that. Now you take a microscope, let's take a rose petal, you put that under, let's take a larger microscope, more powerful, and you grow that up, you blow that up, and it gets even more beautiful. You get electron microscope, it gets more beautiful. Now, you know how men are, and we humans, well, no one's going to see the bottom of this, so don't bother sanding it. Just make sure the top is fine, right? No one's going to see it. Oh, don't worry about what's under the rug. No one's going to see it. But not Jehovah God. He doesn't care whether you're going to see it or not. But he figured, probably will make it. They will invent a microscope, but they're going to see my workmanship. So that's how he is. His work is a masterpiece from its infinitesimal to its grandest, friend. Well, our minds cannot conceive now even the staggering power and the immensity of the universe, which I mentioned earlier is still growing. But we do know that God has kept working. Not only has he created, but the Bible says in John 4:17 that Jesus said, "My Father has kept working until now." Even though he stopped creating at the end of the 6th day and the beginning of the 7th, and he's in a period of rest, Jehovah God still engages in much activity far above the realm of mankind. This is why he created the new creation of the 144,000. That is a new creation, friends. And they're going to be our government under which we're going to live. And they are going to be very instrumental to getting us in our imperfection and have this fellow throw his glasses away someday. You see. Notice this continuous work. And back to Nehemiah 9:6, it says, "You, Jehovah, are that God's doing to intervene to preserve the earth. And he is also intervening to preserve us as a body of Christians." You don't think the devil would try to wipe you out. Look what he tried to do to our brothers in the Nazi concentration camps. And in other places, in Rwanda, and other places. Horrible, friends. But so evidently Jehovah God is somehow empowering his angels to intervene and care for us. And that should give us great confidence that our preservation now, as long as we're faithful and loyal and we stick to him and come to these meetings and get into the truth, then that will guarantee our getting into his new system of things. Well, friends, we could talk for hours. This is ridiculous to try to talk about the grand creator of the universe in the sense that we're going to try to touch it. We've only touched on it. But we do know he is going to be our king through the heavenly kingdom under Christ. And as Moses sang back there, let us always sing this in our heart, if not in Hebrew, but I will sing it in Hebrew. We'll do it in English. Yeshuah, Jehovah, Yimloch, Loam Wa'ed. May Jehovah reign forever and ever. Thank you.